having a hard time getting settled tonight. I know, it's a wild group tonight. I know, it's hard to get people settled down. Well, good evening, everyone. I think Hutton has gotten everybody, like, completely. Good evening. I'm Kate Markert. I'm Executive Director here at Hillwood Estate Museum and Garden, and I am so glad to be with you all tonight. All those, you know, you're all so excited. It's so great. And I want to give a special welcome. We have a number of people in simulcast, so special welcome to those of you in simulcast. But before we continue, you know what I'm going to say. Be sure you turn off anything that makes noise. Well, we may be a whole month, can you believe it? A whole month into 2020 already. But February is really a fresh start here at Hillwood. I think most of you know that we close for a couple of weeks in January, and we tackle cleaning projects. So the mansion really is truly cleaned from top to bottom. And it sparkles. If you've been over there, you realize it just sparkles even more than usual, right when we first open. And then in one short week, we are going to be opening our newest exhibition, which is Natural Beauties, Exquisite Works of Minerals and Gems. And it is really going to be a spectacular show. I cannot wait to see it. It features about 100 objects from our collections and a few truly extraordinary loans. So we are showcasing the lapidary work of master artisans with materials like lapis lazuli, malachite, amethyst, and jade. So, you know, there's not a whole lot of fancy things there. It's just. And then, of course, our annual Valentine benefit, which is called Romancing the Stone, of course, to go with our Hardstone exhibition. It's next Thursday, February 13th. And the event is always truly sensational. We have a lavish open bar, decadent desserts, and an incredible silent auction. And I know after tonight's lecture, there will be stiff competition for cocktails and dinner at Hutton Wilkinson's legendary Dawnridge estate in Beverly Hills. Yes, which is one of our silent auction items. How cool is that? Tickets are still available. We still have tickets available for the 13th, so check it out and claim your spot before we sell out. So then on Friday the 14th, Valentine's Day, Hillwood members are invited to attend the Member Preview Day and learn more from exhibition curator Dr. Wilfred Zeisler. And I know many of you are already members. I saw you upstairs. But if you have not already joined, I encourage you to join us and take advantage of this special opportunity. Membership support is really vital to us. And we're very happy that it provides very rich experiences and scholarship here at Hillwood. And of course, I know you know that members receive discounts in the shop. I've seen you up there too, and at the Merriweather Cafe, which is even more wonderful than it used to be. So now it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's speaker. Los Angeles native Hutton Wilkinson grew up in his father and grandfather's architectural offices. Josh Hildreth making an entrance. At the age of 18, Hutton apprenticed with great American design icon Tony Duquette. He became a paid assistant. See, that's why you start as an intern. You eventually become a paid assistant. It's, you know, ever been thus. And eventually he started his own design firm, but Hutton always worked very closely with Duquette. In 1998, the pair launched a collection of one-of-a-kind fine jewelry. And following Duquette's death in 1999, Hutton became owner, creative director, and president of Tony Duquette Incorporated. He designs lines of jewelry for Saks Fifth Avenue, home furnishings for Baker Furniture, textiles for Jim Thompson Thai Silk, lighting with Remains Lighting. He's, you know, he has all the time in the world. He can just do anything. Carpets and tapestries with Patterson Flynn Martin, and dishes and tabletop accessories with Moda Heyday. His residential and commercial interiors have appeared along with his one-of-a-kind precious jewelry in shelter and fashion magazines, including Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, Town & Country, Elle, Veranda, and the New York Times. Hutton serves as the president of the Elsie de Wolfe Foundation, which is dedicated to furthering the decorative arts in America, and the Anthony and Elizabeth Duquette Foundation for the Living Arts, which presents exhibitions of artistic, scientific, and educational value and promotes the purchases of the works of Tony Duquette. He has written extensively about his friend, mentor, and partner. His most recent book, Tony Duquette's Dawnridge, is available upstairs in the museum shop, and I'm sure that Hutton will be delighted to sign copies following the lecture. Please join me in welcoming Hutton Wilkinson.
Thank you very much. You're very, very kind, and I'm thrilled to be here again at Hillwood, one of my favorite places on earth. Those of you who've sat through this before are very, very, must have very strong constitutions. Those of you that are going to bid on that dinner at Dawnridge, let me tell you, another group came from Hillwood that bought one at your last party, and they wrote me a letter and they said my food made Montezuma's Revenge look like a Deb party in Philadelphia. So just buyer beware. Okay. So we're going to talk about my latest book. It's called Dawnridge, Tony Duquette's Dawnridge. It's a house that he and his wife Elizabeth built in 1949. They were married at Pick Fair. Mary Pickford was the matron of honor, and Buddy Rogers was the best man. And but it goes way back to when he was just a child. He liked to build, and there was an empty lot on the side of his parents' house in Three Rivers, Michigan, and he made things that he called his estates. And then he used to, and then they were all lighted up with birthday candles. And just once a season, he would light them up, and that would be the glory of his estates. And he would make up stories about who lived there and what they did and all that sort of stuff. Anyways, here he is, sort of looking like someone from the Ballet Russe. But what I love is here they are building sandcastles, but look at the guy from the Ballet Russe in the background. I mean, that's pretty cool. So anyway, so his father went broke in the Depression. He had a Ford dealership in Three Rivers, Michigan, and he was basically shattered by the bankruptcy. And so Tony at 18 realized he was the head of the family, and the father had a harebrained scheme that he would take a brand new yellow Lincoln Zephyr convertible, and Tony would drive it across the country and sell it to a movie star in Hollywood. Well, I can guarantee you he probably sold it at a loss, but he got a job at Bullock's department stores, and his job was to make the interior of the store change seasons 4 times a year. If you were all wearing tweeds and furs here in Washington or in New York or back east, anyways, where there was actually a winter, he had to dupe the customers in California to think it was summer, winter, spring, and fall through the air conditioning, the music, the flowers, the whole thing. So there he is. He had a friend that he would ride the streetcar with right here. His name is Caspar Emke. And Caspar was a Bauhaus-trained architect from Austria. And around 1935, he came to America, and he got a job at Bullock's in store planning. And they used to talk on the streetcar, about aspirations and dreams, and Caspar wanted to build Bauhaus modern houses, and Tony said, someday you'll build a house for me, but I want a Venetian palace. So Caspar always hoped that he would forget that he'd promised to hire him to do a house. Anyways, he fell in love with Elizabeth Johnstone. She was an artist, a painter, and they lived together for 8 years, and then finally Mary Pickford said, if you would just get married, I'll pay for the wedding. And that's all Tony needed to know about that. And so here they are. Well, and in the meantime, they were married in 1949, but here in 1947, he had his first exhibition at the Mitch Leisen Gallery, and that was his mentor, Elsie de Wolfe, and Cobina Wright. the Hearst columnist. But L.C.D. Wolfe came to America. She came to California when her house at Versailles was taken over as Nazi headquarters. And she fled for the Spanish border by Rolls-Royce. She got to Madrid. She got to Lisbon. And she got on the Yankee Clipper. And when she arrived in New York at LaGuardia, the headline in the newspaper that day said, L.C.D. Wolfe, Lady Mendel, on best dressed list, arrives on Clipper, has torn stockings. And I have a picture of her getting off the plane. And in our little book that we wrote, and I talked about it here last time I was at Hillwood, called The Walk to Elsie's, we have her ripping her stockings as before she gets off the plane as the symbol of the horrors of being a refugee. So she gets to New York, and she had a apartment at the St. Regis Hotel, and her friend said, come to Washington where the power is, come to Palm Beach and play, stay in New York where you belong. And she said, I'm 75 years old. She lied, she was 85 years old. And she said, I've had a lot of time to think about this. I want to be with the royalty of America, the movie stars. And so she came to Hollywood, and she bought what she said was the ugliest house in Beverly Hills, which she said cost less than one object on her dining room table in Paris. And she discovered Tony Duquette and hired him to do her decorating. And that's was a kind of a modus operandi with her. She was always finding young people to back and make famous. She had a massage girl in New York named Elizabeth Arden, who she turned into Elizabeth Arden, and sold her Main Chance farm. She backed the dress designer Man Boucher. She backed the first Broadway show by Cole Porter and the first Broadway show by Jerome Kern. She was like the mother of the American musical theater. She was an extraordinary gal. She was a heroine of World War I, fighting on the front lines in France. And anyways, and so then she came to California. And so here's the house. The name of her house was After All. And this is Tony. There's Tony. I don't know how to work this thing. There's Tony sitting on a sofa in her house. This thing doesn't work, but it doesn't make the slightest difference. There he is. Anyways, that's Tony. Good. Fine. Let's see if we can get to the next picture. It's like sheer hell there. So then, so there's Mary Pickford. You know, she was America's sweetheart. She was the founder of United Artists Studios. She made all of her money before the invention of income tax. She had the first dime she ever made. And she's wearing that big 400-carat sapphire, which is now in the collection of, Danielle Steele, who was a client of ours, and that's her husband, Buddy Rogers, her second husband. She was married to Douglas Fairbanks, and they lived at Pick Fair, and then with Buddy Rogers. And so she was the matron of honor and he was the best man. And everyone was at the wedding. Gloria Swanson and, you know, just everybody was at that wedding. And so here's L.C.D. Wolfe and her secretary Hilda West at the wedding. And yeah, oh, look, it doesn't work at all. I think I've turned it off there. So great. And that's enough of that. So anyways, at the wedding, there was a real estate agent and a banker, and they said, when you get married, you know, we'll help you get, when you're ready to build a house, we'll help you do it. So Tony was up in that neighborhood all the time, and he found a piece of land, and he told, near Mary Pickford's house, and he told the real estate agent he wanted to buy it. She said, you know, Tony, I love you too much to sell you that property. It doesn't have a front yard. It's on a hillside. You're an artist. You're going to lose your shirt. You don't know what you're doing. I will not sell you the property. Then he went to the banker and he said, I want to buy this property. And he said, I love you too much to lend you the money to do the project because you don't know what you're doing. You're going to lose your shirt, and I won't sell you the property. And Tony said, but for $1,500. And it was 3.5 lots in Beverly Hills for $1,500. So, and Sharon Stone just bought a house next door for $3 million on half a lot. So, okay, that was a million years ago, too. That was like 20 years ago. So anyways, so he went ahead and he was going to do the project, and then his parents jumped in and said, don't build the bedroom wing because you don't know what you're going to doing and you're going to lose your shirt. So he never built the bedroom wing. It was a small, and they call it in magazines, they say the grandest house in Beverly Hills. It's the smallest house in Beverly Hills. The original house was 30 feet by 30 feet. It's a 900 square foot house, smaller than a small New York apartment. So they opened the house with, there's the wedding pictures anyways, they opened the house with a big party. It was called the Bal Derriere, or the Bustle Ball. And all the ladies had to wear bustles. And you know, Loretta Young came, she had a bustle of balloons, and this is there they are, they're greeting their guests, and so it was a big deal. And they're here, they had parties there, and it's kind of hard for me. That's Mary Pickford there, if I think so. I can't even see what it is, but anyways, you know, oh, look at that, there's a red button that's going on, it's so great. And you got Adrian, the dress designer, you got Delmer Daves, the writer, producer, director, Mary Pickford, that's Janet Gaynor on the end here. Who knows who the rest of them are. And that's Sujata, who's an Indian dancer. Tony got him a job to work in the film Kismet that he did. There's people. Okay. So I don't know very much about movie stars. So then it was this write-up in House and Garden magazine, Fantasy in Beverly Hills, and they go on all about it. You can see the whole house was very French fried when it was brand new. This is brand new house, brand new. So the book that is about the house from 1949 to the present. And so Tony only lived in the house for a year, and then he was invited by the Louvre to represent the decorative arts of the middle of the 20th century. So he moved to Paris for a year, and he made this exhibition in Paris, and so he rented the house to Marlon Brando when he was making Julius Caesar, and then Glynis Johns, Zsa Gabor, and then finally Nancy Oakes, whose father, Sir Harry Oakes, was the governor of the Bahamas, who was murdered. And she was married to Hoyne Hune. And so there's all the people at Nancy Oakes' place. And the only one I remember right now is Kirk Douglas is in there. But if you buy the book, you can read the caption. And you know, Kirk, who's gone now at 103 just the other day. Anyway, so the show in the Louvre was a great success. This is the pictures of the show at the Louvre. And Louise de Villemeron, the great French poetess, wrote in French, which I don't speak, "The works of Tony Duquette are no more preconceived than dreams. These works are dreams caught in the net of reality." And so it was a great, big, fabulous show. And, you know, very strange that the Louvre would ask Tony to do, to represent the decorative arts of the middle of the 20th century. They didn't ask Charles and Ray Eames, who were doing, you know, chrome and black leather. They asked Tony, who was doing neo-Baroque decoration. Anyways, their patron was Paul-Louis Valère. He used to own Air France until it was nationalized, but he was one of the richest men in Europe. And he, at his death, he had 65 fully furnished houses, all of them historic. And he gave Tony and Beagle a little carriage house to live in, which they decorated. And here she is. She's wearing they found a court train in the flea market, and they turned it into a ball gown for her. And that was where the carriage would have come in. They made it all out of bits and pieces of old treillage they found in the flea market. So they had a glamorous life there. And then so when they moved back to Los Angeles, they moved to their old studio on Fountain Avenue, showing here. And that mural there is painted on the wall of the liquor store next door. This was the driveway between the house and the liquor store next door. This is where they entertained. And they entertained glamorous people. Look at the way she ties her pearls with a black velvet ribbon. It's so glamorous. So later, they found this old silent film studio. It was built for Norma Talmadge. In the old days, a lot of the stars had their own studios, and her boyfriend was Joe Schenck. He was a big Hollywood executive. So he built her own movie studio, and later Tony discovered it was an abandoned, ruined mess, and he was able to get that for $1,500 as well. And he turned it into, this is his living room. It was 150 feet long, 28 feet high, and 28 feet wide. And so when I was in 7th grade, I opened the LA Times. I was sitting with my father at the breakfast table on Sunday morning, and there was a whole reportage on Tony and Elizabeth Duquette and how they lived in a silent film studio. And he was sitting on a throne from the Chapultepec Palace, showing there, wearing the robes of a cardinal, surrounded by abalone and mother of pearl and crystal chandeliers. And I said to my father, "This is what I'm interested in." He said, "You're 100% crazy." So I clipped the article, I saved it, I asked all my friends, you know, "Do you know Tony Duquette?" And everyone knew him, but nobody would introduce me to him, so life goes on. But the thing about Tony, when he was buying all this stuff for $1,500, he knew the value. You know, so many people know the price, but they don't know the value. And his mother instilled in him the idea of value. The minute the Depression happened, the first thing she bought was a full-length mink coat, because she knew she'd always be warm, she'd always be dressed as a lady, and she wouldn't have to buy a new cloth coat every year. So when he had his clothes made in London and his shoes made in London, he knew it was just going to be pennies a day or pennies a year. They last forever. But anyways, going on. So they had another house next door. There's Dawnridge, but they had another house. They bought the house next door, and it was for rent. It was rented, and so they rented it to two guys. And they picked up two girls at someplace like the candy factory or the candy store, and it got kind of crazy. One of the girls left, and the other girl ended up dead, and they burned the house down trying to hide the dead body. And so anyway, Tony called me up in the morning. He said, "You know, the house is burned down, and there's a dead body." And I said, "Wait till you find out the body was dead before the fire started," and it was. So, so it gave him a place to have a garden. This is the whole. We just call it forest lawn. So anyway, so there they are. So this is a house. There they are in the 40s, and the front doors are bronze, and it was like thrown out in the trash, and he picked it up and nailed it on the doors, and then this is the way it looked in the 80s, and this is the way it looks now. And And so he used to get the guys from the post office to stand there, and he had all the 18th century liveries from the Baroness to Erlanger, so they'd all stand around holding candelabra and stuff. But now, they used to be $10 a night. Now we get them for $200 a night, and they stand there and look pretty. And that's the way the house looked when Tony was living there in the 80s. This is the way it looks now. I found these two, these are old, see, hello. This thing doesn't work, the light, but it doesn't make the slightest difference. Those two columns there, I call them ironic columns. They're old air filters that are piled up instead of ionic columns. There you go. Oh, that's good. Show that. And there it is. And the 18th century silk, that was smoke on the ceiling from when the house burned down next door. It made that, bless you, it made that smoke on the ceiling. And so Tony liked it. He just shellacked it. And so there it is. And those candelabra. So I said, Tony, you had this great idea back in the 40s. You put votive lights up into the chandeliers. And so he went to Pick and Save, and he got plastic drinking glasses. And so those are plastic drinking glasses with lights in them. Fantastic. Oops, sorry. I keep doing that. I pushed the wrong button because I'm not very good at this. There it is in the 40s, the entrance hall. So Elizabeth painted the murals on the doors. That's the lady going into the powder room. This is the lady coming out of the kitchen. And this is what it's turned into. So those two pictures of the ladies, they were actually hidden in the doorway. See that doorway in the center there with the tassels on each side? They were hidden. They were sliding doors. So I took them out, and there she is. She's going into the powder room down there. She's coming out of the kitchen here. So this is the way it looks today. And so this is the way it looked when Tony was living there with the Venetian furniture and all of the Chinese rugs and things. And then I turned it into the Camelot Room. He won the Tony Award for Best Costume for the original Broadway production of Camelot, Richard Burton, Robert Goulet, Julie Andrews. And so and then those bas-reliefs, those are his earliest works that he showed to Billy Haynes, and that's what really made him famous. On the table is a maquette from the MGM film, lovely to look at, where Marge and Gower Champion were dancing on top of that pedestal. And this was from Camelot, and it's the only, he used to make the costume designs in 3D like this, and we had every single character in the play. You wouldn't have believed the caparison horses and the page boys and the knights in armor, and they all burned up. He had 4 major fires in his life, so in one of those fires, those burned up. This was saved because it was in my house. So Tony was from that era when he used to do special effects for the movies, but he didn't blow up buildings. He did a fashion show, a ballet sequence, a dream sequence, whatever. And so he kept saying to Lerner and Loewe when he was doing Camelot, he said, you really should put a ballet into this production. And they said, that is a really stupid idea. So every 5 minutes he said, how about throwing a ballet in? And that would be a great place for a ballet. You're not having a ballet. It's a crappy idea. It's going to stop the show. You're not having a ballet. So finally they came to him and they said, okay, there's this moment where we have to change all the scenery. You have 5 minutes to put on your stupid ballet. So he created this thing called the Magic Forest Ballet, where all the animals in Morgan Le Fay's dominion took on human attributes and danced a little jig. Well, it stopped the show. The critics wrote it's the only musical where you leave whistling the costumes and sets, and they never hired him again. So that was that. So those are 2 deer from Morgan Le Fay's dominion. So this is that same room, the Camelot Room, and this is a chair that he designed for his show at the Louvre. And that's another chair. I found it in a garage sale in Santa Barbara that was in his show at the LA County Art Museum. So, and people, I was outside the house and this car pulled up and very slowly, and this window came down in the back, and I said, may I help you? And there's an old lady in the back, and she said, I've got some Tony Duquette things. Would you like them? And I said, sure. And she handed them out the window to me, 2 of these bas-reliefs. So that was sort of fun. It drove away, and I didn't have to even say thank you. It was great. And so this is a little powder room. So you can see this is Elsie de Wolf's house after all. And there's the mirror, which I found in a junk store in Long Beach. So there's the mirror now in the powder room, which is like being inside of a little 18th century cabinet of curiosity. And so then at his wedding, there was the daughters of a Greek shipping tycoon, and they said, we're going to give you a silver tea set for your wedding. And Tony said, I don't want a silver tea set, I want the front doors of your house. So they sent a 17th century Spanish doorway there with an old master painting in it, and 2 16th century Spanish doors. And so the doors burned up in his fire at the ranch. And so I bought this house. I didn't inherit it. I bought the house to save its life, because in Hollywood, you can build 3 Tuscaranian villas on this property, and I think it's a house worth saving. And all of his things have burned up, and so much of his original work of art. So I thought this is the one thing we could save. Anyway, not quite Hillwood, but you know, it has its moments. Anyway, so I had to sell all the 17th, 18th, and 19th century antiques to pay the heirs, who were his nieces and nephews and brothers and sisters, and the government, Uncle Sam. There was the uncle, and so we redecorated it. And so I put a sheet of mirror, and I put his 1/8 scale model of the Primal Sun sculpture, which was purchased by Arthur Spitzer, an oil billionaire, and donated to UCLA. That is, you know, 8 times the size of that. So there it is. And so there's Tony. Again, he found this place in Rome that sold fabrics for ecclesiastical garments, and so he had all of his clothes made out of those things. And there's the house, 1949, very, you know, French fried. And then here it is when he was living there in the 80s with the great murals. And then he put his picture that he was, it's all about, you know, maximalism. It's all about layering. So he was layering his picture on top of the 18th century panels. And then this is the way. So the day, our last trip around the world, we were in the flea market in Paris, and I saw these sunbursts by Pujarat. And I bought one, there was one. And when I touched it, I was transported like Harry Potter touching a port key to this. And I knew the day was going to come when all that 18th century stuff was going to have to be sold, and I was going to have to redecorate. So the time came, and well, we were going around the world. So when we got to Bali, I had it made 150 times, and then we were making it, and everything had gone off to Christie's for the largest house sale in American history at that time, and I had to redecorate it because I was having a party for the LA County Art Museum. So we were making these things, and I got to the part about the convex mirrors, and they wanted $60 for each convex mirror, and I didn't have $60. So I thought, what would Tony have done, because he was so modern and of his time? So I figured he'd go to hubcaps.com, 4 for $24. So those are hubcaps. And that's how, you know, I mean, Tony was always using non-traditional materials to gain traditional effects, so I learned that lesson from him. The piece in the center was from his exhibition in 1972 called, it was called A Personal Culture, the exhibition at the Municipal Art Gallery in Los Angeles, but this was called A Fragment of a Priestess's Robe, or a Specimen of Rhinestone Disease. And these pieces here, I found the heads were made for Cobina Wright, and there's photographed in Vogue magazine in the 40s, and I found them at Bonham's auction house, and then the pedestals are actually 17th century carcasses that he kind of fixed up or ruined, or whatever. Sometimes, you know, that you say, how's Tony today? They say, at his destruction. But so anyways, and there's the LCD Wolf cabinet. You can see in the first picture, we had a 17th century cabinet from a Piedmontese cabinet, all inlaid with ivory, and then we changed it for the LCD Wolf cabinet. And that was the first piece of furniture that she ordered from Tony. And he was working at Bullock's department stores for $15 a week, and he got the phone call. The operator said, Lady Mendel calling. He thought it was a practical joke, but she had seen a table centerpiece that he had designed, and she said, I want you to, you know, make an appointment to come see me. And when he went to her house, she spoke French with a Brooklyn accent. She used to say Goyles and Poyles and Toity Street, and because she was born in 1855, and that's how they talked back then if you were in high society in New York. So she said, I want you to make me a moible, and I want it to be green and black and jeweled and all this stuff. And he took notes like crazy, and when she left the room, he said to her secretary, Hilda West, what's a moible? And she said, it's a great piece of furniture. Lady Mendel feels that, here it is, Lady Mendel feels that every room should have one great piece of furniture. So you know, in French it's pronounced meuble, and in Spanish it's mueble, and in Brooklynese it's moible. So it's the LCD Wolf cabinet, and Sir Charles Mendel called it ducatry instead of marquetry. And there's the Piedmontese piece, and then we replaced it with this piece. So I have a letter from LCD Wolf to Margaret Case at Vogue, and she says, I'm sending you a rich, juicy orange, not a sour lemon. This boy is a genius, and the word genius is, they had to take out the typewriter ribbon, put in a green ribbon, genius, and emerald green, because she was in her green and white phase then. And this boy is a genius. He's made for me a secretary desk in black and green lacquer, and on top are dancing gods from the Ile de Bal. And then in parentheses, I love that little red thing that comes around. I don't have to do anything, it just happened. Look, I'm not touching it. It's so great. Move it around. Look at that, it's like magic. And so he's on top are the dancing gods from the Ile de Bal. And then in parentheses, but I don't think this kid's ever heard of the Isle of Bali. He's in the Army, and he's made me promise that if anything happens to him, I leave the desk to the LA County Art Museum. So nothing happened to him. In fact, if they'd put a gun in his hand, we'd all be Japanese, but that's a whole other story. Nothing happened to him. She gave the desk to him, he gave the desk to me. So here it is. And now what I do with that, and now Tony Duquette these days, if I could just switch the picture, I make fabric. So there's Elsie with her desk, the moible, you know, the moible, to Tony, the one and only, because she had a lot of Tonys in her life. He made sure she signed to the one and only Tony. And she's with her dog Blue. She dyed the dog blue and her hair blue too, French poodle. And that's the fabric I make out of these doors. I made a Rorschach test of the doors, and so it's pretty cool for Jim Thompson. Okay, let's see what the next one is. So here we are. So that's the way the house looks today. And I really took a lot of the furniture out of the room, just made it into a gallery, almost into a living room. The ceiling is original to the house, 1949. The Venetian glass chandelier, he had the Venetian glass flowers blown to look like Piedmont lilies, and this wired to a very simple frame. And that's the way it looked when he was living there with the 18th century Venetian dolphins from the collection of Monsieur Cert in Paris. Then after we got the house, I put the seashell panels, they're leftover party decoration from an undersea ball that he did for Mrs. William Matson Roth, the steamship heiress. She had a famous house in California called Filoli, up in Woodside, California. It's a National Historic House now. And once a year they would have a party. And in the 60s, Tony was spending $365,000 for one night's decoration, which was a lot of money. They were killing people on Perry Mason for $30,000 back then. So anyways, so when I got the house, I just wanted to take everything out of closets and warehouses and drawers. And so I just put them up there. And the lamps were made by Baker Furniture, exact copies of the ones that were there in 1949. The biomorphic console and mirror was made for the Lockheed heiress for her house in Bel Air. And we purchased it back and then made it again. It's being made now by Maitland Smith. And there's those seashell panels for that party, at that party. So it's kind of fun. And there's the house the way it looked. There's the corner of the house when it looked in 1949. And so the lambrequins over the windows are fabulous. It's t-shirt fabric dipped in plaster and painted to look like tooled leather with 18th century wings from Italy and silver urns from Spain. And so there was the fabric. So I bought the house with turquoise silk satin curtains. And I couldn't afford to clean them, and I couldn't afford to change them. So I took them out and spray painted them on a weekend with pink, gold, and red paint through Chinese screens and grillworks. And then these guys came from Jim Thompson for dinner, and they said, "Where did you get that incredible ikat fabric?" And I said, "I spray painted it on the weekend." So they said, "You must make fabric for us." So this is the new fabric that they made for me, and it's very pretty. It's called Fireworks or Faux d'Artifice. And this is also the Jim Thompson fabric, the ermine tail. It's called Royal Ermine. And these curtains are actually lined in ermine tail because when he did Beauty and the Beast for San Francisco Ballet, he lined the proscenium curtain in ermine tail. So I thought I'd better do the same. And so this is the way the house looked when he lived there. Then it kind of looked like this when we put in tables and chairs and furniture and all that stuff. And it was cozy. But then we thought that was enough of that. So now we've made it just a gallery. It's just wide open, no sofas, just everything. It's like an entrance hall, and I think it's pretty great. He had 17th century paintings of Venice by Heinz on the wall. These are his watercolors of Venice that were exhibited at the Louvre, and all of Elizabeth's paintings. And I used to say to him, "Why don't you show your own work?" And he didn't really have an answer. I think he felt if he was surrounded by valuable antiques, people would think he was rich. But he was rich. But he said to a friend of his who owned Ghirardelli Square in San Francisco, he said, "You know, with all my genius, the only thing that's made me rich is my real estate." And the man said, "That was your genius." So whatever. He loved real estate. He said, "I'm just a little French peasant." So anyways, and these are his three-dimensional costume designs for DeRozan Cavalier San Francisco Opera in those cases. When you come to Dawnridge, when you buy that dinner at Dawnridge, God help you, you'll see all this. And I make you pay to get out. So this was a balcony, and that is, I love the stove he made in the form of truncated obelisk. The lamps he later sold to Doris Duke. He was her decorator since 1952, and I didn't buy them back at the Doris Duke sale, but I didn't realize it because I didn't make the book where this photograph was in until later. And oh my God, I would have bought those. Anyways, so this is the way it looked when he was living there. And Buddha is 18th century Burmese, red lacquer. And then this is the way it looks now. With his abalone chandelier, it was remade by Baker Furniture. And Tony used to say if there was only one abalone shell in the world, that wars would be fought over it for its beauty. So we called him Tony Abalone. Everything was abalone. We used to eat out of abalone shells, and oh my God, it was endless. So this is the guest bedroom when Tony lived there. And let's just see what happens. Oh. And that's the way it looks today. If that bed could talk, it would scream. And this is the way it looked when Tony lived there. He had a lot of 18th century English furniture and things which we sold. And then this is, so there's the little sleeping alcove. So it used to have Ming Dynasty paintings on the wall. And now it has, I walled up that window, now it has this fabric that Jim Thompson made for him in the 1960s. I have bolts and bolts and bolts. The bed is by Siri Mom. It's a real one made for the actress Ina Claire, who played Princess Swana in Ninotchka. Then there used to be a bathtub there when Tony was there, but I needed to put that piece of furniture somewhere, so I took out the bathtub. His mirrors from 1947. Yeah, it's very cool. Unfortunately, you really can't see the baseboards in this room, but Elizabeth, and her nickname was Beagle. She had the industry of the bee and the soaring poetry of the eagle, so we called her Beagle. And Beagle and I painted the baseboards in there with marking pens to look just like the fabric from Brunswick. So it's rather amusing. I didn't know I could paint. So this is a staircase going down to the little bedrooms down in the basement of the house, which I now just use for storage. But this is how it looked in 1949. This was the little bedroom. I'm mad crazy for that piece of furniture, which it's all studded with gold sequins. There's nail heads going through a gold sequin. So it's a fantastic piece. Anyways, Liza Minnelli used to hang out. She was Tony's goddaughter. She used to hang out on this big vicuña throw. And she told me about it. She said, I used to curl up on that vicuña. And she said, there's nothing like it. And so then this is Tony's bed. I took a lady at a dinner party, I took her down there to show her this bedroom, and she said, if I was to drag a young boy down here, he would immediately become impotent. So, I don't know. But it was all like, it was just like a Chinese whorehouse, but it was really fantastic. And this is his dress. This was the way, this is a little tiny bedroom with Chinese wallpaper, and then it became this, you see, and it became that. So, and Tony loved all of his trims and doorways and malachite and stuff like that. So he's kind of fabulous. And this was a garage. We never used a garage. A garage always became a room. So this was a garage, and we turned it into a library, and we have dinners in there every now and then. And then there was a glassed-in porch. So Tony, while I was in Europe one year, he glassed in the porch, and that was it. And then he filled it with storage, and it made me so. I have no regrets, but the only regret I had with Tony was that it took me 10 minutes to decorate this room. He would have loved it so much to be able to sit out there and see his garden, but he put the fabric on the ceiling, and it stopped right there. So this is the glass porch. We turned it into a dining room before it got the curtains, and there it is after we got the curtains. It's my fabric called Tibetan Sunburst for Jim Thompson. And we have really great dinner parties here, and the ceiling is very low. And I said to my friend, whose husband was the CEO of 20th Century Fox, I said, why are these parties so much fun? And she said, because the ceiling's so low. And Tony always believed in squishing people in like you're all tearing from the same beast. It's very primordial. And he said, we don't have candlelight because it's romantic. It's because it's like we're sitting around a campfire telling stories. So anyway, so we have good times in this room. And if you all come for dinner, what am I giving you, a dinner? Lord have mercy. Okay, we'll sit here and eat, maybe. So there it is. We see abalone shells. That's what we have. Okay. And snake skin. So anyways, this is called the monkey room because it's the same room. It's this glassed-in porch, but it has a frieze of monkeys, and it has these wonderful monkeys by Oliver Messel. We used to have 3, 2 burned up, and I was able to buy this one from the Leo Lerman sale, also by Oliver Messel. So I have 2 now instead of 3. And this was a little one-car garage on the other side of the house, and so they immediately turned into a dining room that looked like that. Later in the 80s, it looked like this. And today, and then that's how we said, we don't use flowers. We just use things, and rock crystal and gold insects and things. And so now it looks like this. And I had a stack of 8-inch by 11-inch drawings of Venice, pen and ink drawings of Venice, and I blew them up 8 feet tall to make the screen. And this is the favorite piece of furniture of Adrian, the dress designer, used by Cecil Beaton in My Fair Lady in Mrs. Higgins' house, now being made by Maitland Smith. And this is the way it looks now. So a lady died at 103. Tony had decorated her house in 1950. And she gave me that screen. So there it is, and it looks so much better than the other one. This is really fantastic. So there it is, and you'll come there. So, and there's the screen in his exhibition, 1947, you see. And there's the two ladies who were going to give him the silver tea set, the daughters of the Greek shipping tycoon, who ended up giving them the front doors of their house. Tony was incredible. He'd ask for what he wanted. When Vernon Duke wanted to, what would you like for your wedding? He said, I want the painting over your sofa, and he sent it. So, nobody could say no, and he walked into Anne Ford Johnson's house, and he said, the first thing he saw was a malachite bear sitting on the table, the console table. He said, a malachite bear. She said, just take it. I'm going to have to give it to you anyways. So he was really something. I don't know. I asked his wife, I said, what does he have that I don't have? I can't get anyone to take out the trash. And he's got people giving him stuff constantly. I mean, we got a call from MGM, and they said, look, we're going to bulldoze the back lot of MGM and build a housing development. If there's anything you want, come and get it, because in 2 weeks it's going to be bulldozed. And we went with 8 laborers and 2 huge trucks, and we took everything. We took it all. I saw it all. It was fantastic. So this is that same room. It was a 1-car garage, and here it is. And now we call it the green room, even though it's blue. And the garden is quite large and extraordinary, and that's how it was when he lived there, just tiny. And now it's big. And there's a big upper terrace. There's Tony and her brother, Ronnie Johnstone, and this is the way it kind of looks today, but it's a little less dense because we have tables now where we have lunch. And those are old street lights that, he loved found objects. And this is looking up at it in the 80s. In the 80s, it had those deer on each side of the staircase. And then there was with a swimming pool. The swimming pool died, so I buried it there. But there's the 2 obelisks from the MGM film, lovely to look at, covered in nacre. The 18th century grotto chairs from the Hearst collection, grapefruit chairs. So this is the way that looked, and this is 80s, from the 80s. This is the way it looks today. So we have prices, and I got the chandelier from the James Coburn house that we decorated in the 70s, and the new owners didn't want it. It's so fabulous with the mirrored ball in the center, and so it's hanging there, and things happen. It's really great. It's really great. It looks like it's hanging in midair. And so this is it. So Tony loved frogs in the center, but I loved elephants. So I bought these elephants in Jodhpur with their attendants. And this is like just a shed here, but with a snail and the whole thing. And this was a tree house. So this is a tree house way back in the 80s, how it looked. And that sculpture over there is called Phoenix Rising from Its Flames. On his 80th birthday, his ranch in Malibu burned to the ground, and he created an exhibition for the Arm & Hammer Museum called Phoenix Rising from Its Flames. And that's one of the smaller phoenix birds. The other one is 28 feet tall, which I'll show you. Here's the way this room looks today. I've just rebuilt it for the 3rd time in its life. It was like nightmare. That's our lighting, by the way, for Remains lighting, the lamp and the chandelier. And this is the way it looks also, with my fabric from Jim Thompson and the malachite chair seats. And then this is another pavilion in the gardens, and that round green stuff, it's what they used to separate computer wires under office building floors in the late 70s, and it's made of plastic, but Tony thought it looked like 18th century Chinese grill work. So there it is, and there's the swimming pool before it died. And this is, he bought an old skateboard factory. Those are all skateboards. Everything had a frieze of skateboards. They all disintegrated. There's just like a few. And then my caretaker just found a whole pile of them. So now we're going to put some more around. That's the hood from his stove at his old studio with a whale vertebrae and then reflectors from the freeway and stuff like that. This is where the girl died, in that house. All that was left was, Tony throws a great funeral, let me tell you. All that was left was this chimney, so he built this room around it, and that he made an office I don't think he ever set foot in. And there was his office out in the garden. Never entered, never went in there. But the chairs are fantastic. He decorated Barrettstown Castle for Elizabeth Arden. He bought the chairs in Ireland, and the desk was fantastic. the works and those fabulous. He was in Verona the day they were closing an old apothecary shop, and all those 18th century apothecary boxes in the back. He bought the whole place. So this is it. There's the giant 28-foot tall phoenix bird in the background. He used the egg shape to symbolize rebirth and continuance. It was after his ranch in Malibu burned to the ground in one of those forest fires, and he lost 28 structures full of treasure in one afternoon. So he made this exhibition for Arm & Hammer Museum, and it was a big success. And so here it is, sort of on a rainy day, and there was this house was in the canyon, a house from Thailand. And after we bought the house, about who knows how many days later, there were 8 days of rain and a little puff of wind, and one tree fell down and hit the other like dominoes. 8 trees smashed this into a million pieces. But when I first saw the property in 1972, I thought there should be a lake there, and I thought it would be a very large, very deep lake. And so when this house was destroyed, there's Tony. When the house was destroyed, I was able to build a lake there. And there it is. And so I took the old roof ends from the Thai house and I put it on the little boat. I found the boat on Beverly Boulevard and I bought it. And and then I found those minarets. I bought them in India, but they were, I could tell everyone, they're from Osama bin Laden's mosque in Baghdad. And these are the tops of those cheap Indian screens that are just wired on with florist wire. And I had those three arches in my warehouse, 3 arches from India, but I realized they were carved on both sides, so I sliced them down the middle, and I got upstairs and downstairs. And then way off in the distance, I started building another house for myself. There's 5.5 contiguous lots here. And anyways, I got my fish, and I started out with 7 fish. They like it, so they got more fish. And so in the garden, Tony had a little house for his wife, for her paint studio. It was called Beaglesville. So this is the interior of her house there, where she painted, and it was really kind of glamorous. There it is. And then, so we built the house next door. And it was published 3 times, Harper's Bazaar, Town and Country, and Veranda, 3 times 3 years. So there's the entrance, all my lighting by Remains Lighting, California Sunburst. This is a little miniature desk. It was either made for a midget or a little girl, but Venetian, 18th century. The powder room, it's all Brazilian amethyst, and all quite very pretty. And the doors go that the Blackamoor doorknobs are 18th century Venetian. I bought this table at Neal's in New Orleans, and it was a round table. I sliced it down the middle, and I got 2 console tables out of it. And I found the chinoiserie mirrors in Texas, and they're all gilded behind. They're really good ones, but some decorator painted them white, so I just left it. The dining room, I got the 18th century Coromandel screens from Joel Chen. The table's kind of groovy, and the table centerpiece is by Codognato, the most famous jeweler in Venice. And my client, Dodie Rosecrans, who I decorated her palazzo in Venice, a 12th century palazzo on the Grand Canal. And she bought that from Codognato. I introduced her to Codognato. She bought it. It was $60,000. And at her sale at Sotheby's, everyone thought they were buying 1 candlestick, and there were 9. So I got it for the price of 1 candlestick, which was really rather adorable. And we love it, everything. We buy everything back. Everything. There it is. So, and the paintings from the Baroness d'Erlange's collection. She owned the Villa Malcontenta. These came from the Palazzo Morosini sale around 1914 in Venice. They had hung at the Correr Museum, and all the coral branches from 18th century from China were from L.C.D. Wolf's collection. And then this is the library, and that panel in the back opens up, and I have a little office back there. And that was an armoire. The 2 doors in the middle opened like this, and the 2 other doors were sides. And we sold it to those Greek shipping tycoon ladies and then bought it back. So that's my wife and my portrait done by Juan Bastos, a Bolivian artist. And that commemorated when the King of Spain gave me my grandfather's Spanish title in 2007. And here it is again. And so anyways, I was going to have bookcases all the way up, and I realized I had all these Spanish colonial paintings. My mother was Bolivian. My granddaddy was president of Bolivia 1934 to 1936. And so I had all the Bolivian stuff, all the Spanish colonial stuff. There's the King of Spain, Carlos III, holding in his hand a document to my ancestor, the Count of Alastaya. and the coat of arms. And those two paintings were stolen from my mother's warehouse 20 years before I found them in Bolivia. Well, I found them anyways, and they were for sale in Spain, so I got them back. It was rather amusing. And I bought back those. The dolphins had been sold at the Christie's sale, again, to my client, Dodie Rosecrans, who bought them for her palazzo, and then I was able to get them back because it was such a crappy sale at Sotheby's that everything went for nothing. So that was great. So then I had my friend Charlotte Jackson paint the murals. They're kind of de Chirico-esque, you know, on the staircase. And this is like a little stage in the drawing room, and all the gold leaf is put up, you know, piece by piece. And there's a staircase, goes up 3 floors. And she did this mural, this kind of fantasy mural of Venice. And the chandeliers are now made by Remains Lighting. Those ones are made with hot glue guns by me. They're the prototypes. And I was able to buy these the two black ones. I have 4 of them. So I bought them for my client at the Palazzo Brandolini, and there were 2, and I got them back to the Palazzo, and I realized they were both left-handed. So I called the dealer, and I said, you know, these are both left-handed. Do you think there were any more? So she called the Prince of Palazzo Balbi. He said, yeah, there were 4. I gave 2 to my sister and 2 to myself. So the idiot broke the pair. So I was able to get the other 2 from the sister. So then when my client died, I was able to get them from her family, and here they are. And they're 7.5 feet tall. They're really fantastic. And the paintings, again, 17th century by Heinz of Venice. And you can see how it's a little stage back there. I had a party the other night with opera singers and flamenco dancers, and it was really, really fun. And there, okay, you've seen it all now. And this is the bedroom. So, you know, we have 3 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms, but the way we live, we have 1 bedroom to sleep, and then she gets 1 to make a mess in, and I get 1 to make a mess in. So that's the way it is. And the library ended up on the balcony. This is my dressing room. So I have these incredible paintings, they're not paintings, the etchings of Yuan Ming Yuan, which was a Chinese palace designed by the Italian Jesuit priest Giuseppe di Castiglione for the Emperor Qianlong in the 17th century. And he had told the Chinese emperor about Versailles, and the emperor wanted one for himself. So it's reverse chinoiserie. It's like a Chinese palace that's supposed to look French. And it's the most amazing thing. So Tony used to tell me about this palace because he visited Misia Cert in 1947 in Paris, and she had the giant bronze head of a rat and the giant bronze head of a hare on each side of her fireplace. And in this palace there was a water fountain, and with the, you know, all these animals, and the year of the rat, the year of the dog, the year of the horse, whatever it is, the year of the hare, and every hour they would spit water on it was a mechanized cog and wheel run by water, computerized fountain. And so, because this guy was a genius, he was like Leonardo da Vinci. He was a genius inventor. He's the one who taught the Chinese how to paint perspective. So anyways, I used to see little pictures of these things in magazines this big. So finally we were walking in the Place des Vosges one day, and there it was, this huge wall full of these paintings, or these prints. And I said, Tony, I said, this is what we've been looking for all our life. So we go in, and it wasn't an art gallery, it was a book publisher called Jardin de Fleur, and there were only 3, the emperor had made books, 20 prints in a folio, and given to all the crowned heads of Europe to show that he was not a barbarian, that he had a beautiful palace too. So there are only 3 left in the world, 1 at the Louvre, 1 at the Met, and 1 in a private collection. So this book publisher had published 200 numbered copies on the finest paper with the finest engraving. So we each bought, and they were so expensive, it was like $200, okay? So we each bought, it was a lot of money. I made $50 every 2 weeks. So we each bought a book. And then I knew later, I knew that they were valuable, and I knew they were worth about $14,000. But anyways, so when I sold Tony's book, it went for $17,000 at auction. And then when Dodie Rosecrans bought it, and when she sold it, it went for $20,000. So, but this is my pride. I mean, I'm mad gaga for this palace. And so Lord Elgin, after the Boxer Rebellion, he gave the French, English, American, German, and Italian troops 5 hours to loot the palace and rip it to the ground. And so it was one of the greatest destructions of the late, early 19th century. And early 20th century, sorry, late 19th century. And anyways, and at the Peabody Museum, there's an incredible Anglo-Indian desk made entirely of ivory, and so it's been there on display as an Anglo-Indian desk. Finally, somebody with a brain looked at it and realized it's a Chinese desk. It came from this palace. It's entirely made of ivory. There's nothing Anglo or Indian about it, and it's just extraordinary. So anyway, so this is my thing, and that's my bathroom. Okay, let's move this thing on. I can tell that Kate thinks that you're hungry. My wife's dressing room, and so I bought 2 little paintings this big from Bonham's of Elizabeth Duquette's work, and I blew them up 10 feet tall photographically. After I did that, I realized that these were the maquettes for an MGM film called Goodbye Charlie that she did for Vincent Minnelli. Meanwhile, Liza just had a sale of her things, and I was able to buy 6 more of those maquettes, so that's kind of fun, that Vincent obviously had. And also the bed came from the actress Ina Claire and sold to her by L.C.D. Wolfe, an 18th century bed. The fireplace, I needed a little 4-foot fireplace, hardest thing on earth to find. It's a Trumeau mirror. I cut the bottom off. I got it for 60 bucks. Cut the bottom off it and made the mirror. The chairs belonged to Adrian, their 18th century Venetian. And there's the 2 little paintings I bought that became the walls, you see. And her bathroom and, you know, all of that stuff. And then our bedroom, that I had the wallpaper hand painted in India on silk to look like the gardens of Shalimar. So it's it's like Chinese wallpaper, but very Indianized with peacocks and things like that. And then on each side of the bed are the Lac Bergate Korean cabinets from Doris Duke's collection. And I was on the phone for the Doris Duke sale, and they were listed as Chinese. I knew they were Korean because we sold them to her. And so. So they so they said, ladies and gentlemen, you know, these are not Chinese, these are Korean, and nobody would bid on them. Korean is so much more rare than Chinese. They're rare, really great ones, and also the lamps I sold to Doris and got them back. We like to get things back, and this is the top of the pavilion was from an MGM film called The Gazebo with Glenn Ford and Debbie Reynolds, and there's a dead body under the gazebo and all that. So here it is, and so I made that. But it's all made. The only thing from the movie is the roof. And that's a rose garden. This is like a ceremonial entrance into the house. The swimming pool. I can tell you want to leave. So this is the guest house next door. And I put in the oval pool, and I made a courtyard entrance. So I figure when you're in this courtyard, you're in the entrance hall. And this is it. So the panels on each side of the fireplace are really valuable from C.T. Lou in Paris. And so then I had this other ones. I had my artist paint the really crappy ones to look just like it, and like there across the back wall. So this is the guest house, and there it is, a lovely Venetian mirror. And Tony always said there's a house up the street that has an 18th century boiserie in the dining room, and so this was it. I bought it, and you know, I kind of bought it sight unseen, and here it is. And that's the dining room. There's a bedroom. It's all very normal, and you know, guests. And so when this is that, so we love parties at Dawnridge. So this was the ball derriere that we told you about. There's Loretta Young with her, you know, bustle of balloons. All the people. She had a bustle of dragonflies over there on her Adrian dress. And there we are going to a party. Tony had me wear that hat. I don't know, it was supposed to be some kind of a costume, but I can't imagine what I was doing in that goddamn hat. But anyways, we were babies, you know, like 18. Here we are, a little older here. And then this is the, you know, I cover the whole front of the house with a painting that I had done in India that looks like the Amber Palace in Jaipur, and that was kind of fun. And then here's a party at Dawnridge in the garden, and you know, and they come from London. That is the granddaughter of Eleanor Glynn. There's that lady with the purple hat on. So yeah, parties, and there's Tony and Beagle, who without them there would be nothing for me here. Thank you very much. And here's the police have come to arrest me. I always say, don't call the decorator, call the police. Damn. So any questions? Before I sell each of you a book, you can't get out without a book, you know, it's like going to happen. Anybody? Questions, just ask, I'll answer. I'll make something up.
I seem to have missed how you ended up meeting Tony.
Oh, well, no, it was like kismet, but I wanted to work with him since I was in 7th grade. So then, oh yeah, so I had an art teacher when I was 17, and she put a note in my, we used to play, if you were Tony Duquette, how would you do this project? Just me and her, and not the other kids. And so she put a note in my locker one day, said, Tony's looking for volunteers. I quit my job and quit my school that day. And I went to work for him for free for 2 years, no money, zero. And then he paid me $50 every 2 weeks for 3 years, which makes me pretty stupid. And I was 21 years, it makes me 21 after 3 years. I'm about 21 years old, and then he offered me $5 an hour, and I said, I think I can do better on my own. And Jimmy Carter was in office. We had 20% inflation. I saw French furniture go from $500 to $5,000 overnight, and I made a pile of dough. And then we became investment partners in real estate, houses, apartment houses, office buildings. And then he got older, and people were offering him really good jobs, and he didn't want to take them. I said, take the jobs, I'll do the work. So then we did that, and we split the money. So we were business partners, and the last jobs we did together were the Palazzo in Venice and apartment in Paris. And then, and 5 years before he died, Bergdorf Goodman invited us to make a collection of one-of-a-kind jewelry, which we did, and it was instantly successful. The Vogue magazine wrote, after a maximum of minimalism, all fashion is turning to Tony Duquette for inspiration. So we keep that going, and here we are. Thank you for the question. I forgot to tell you all that garbage. Anyone? Oh, yes.
You mentioned the house was originally 900 square feet.
30 by 30.
But what is it today?
It's not even, I don't think it's 4,000. There's another 20 by, you figure it out, another, let's say, a 20 by 40 foot section, or 20 by 30 foot section. What's that, another 600 square feet? Yeah. It's tiny. Yeah, but still, they think it's the grandest house in Beverly Hills. You all have a question. I know you do. Yes?
What's the easiest way to dust all those artifacts?
Wait, say that again. What's the easiest way to?
Dust.
Oh, nobody dusts. Oh, no. That's called patina. Although for 2 weeks at the beginning of January, we clean our house because, just like Hillwood. No. Yeah.
What's the most memorable or extravagant party that you think of right away when you think of Johnny?
Well,
I think there's been some crazy stuff.
There have been some really crazy and extravagant ones, but I think the most crazy and extravagant ones, I mean, listen, we do everything on a shoestring. Like Tony used to say, I'm a do-it-yourself de Medici, okay? So, but I just did 2 parties in Palm Beach for my clients, and I just did, we did a circus ball where we brought a circus from St. Louis, which was beyond, I had the Flying Walendas, it was unbelievable. It was their 60th wedding anniversary. We had a tent 150 feet by 80 feet, first covered in black velvet, and then hung like that, with chandelier crystals that big that had been mirrored on one side, so it was all like that because a diamond anniversary like that, diamonds. And I said to the guy, you know, it's your 60th anniversary, you have to get her a 60-carat diamond. And he said, well, she already has one. And I said, no. I said, no, that's only 50 carats. You need to get a 60. I said, I'm going to design something for you. So I designed a necklace and I designed a brooch. So he said she'll never wear the necklace. So he took the brooch, and the brooch was a baby elephant, all caparison in rubies and yellow sapphires, holding a 60-carat diamond like a ball. It was like it was balancing on a ball. It was so cool, a circus elephant. It was really great. She's never worn it. And but then for the same people, I did a carnival. I mean, a Caribbean carnival where when you walk, the minute you set foot on the dance floor, you were on the ship, the deck of a pirate ship, and it was so fabulous. I can't tell you. So that was pretty good. So those are the most extravagant ones. Right? We do everything on a shoestring, but you know, life is hell. So shall we go? Shall we sign books and have drinks or something? Thank you very much.